main purpose that we share this testimony is really just how you see how powerful and how wonderful God is. We share it because it's real, it's raw, it's authentic. We might use different words depending if there's little ears around, but I'm sure you might pick up on what we're trying to say. So I'll pass it over to you because I've been doing a lot of talking today.
Like Ian said, I don't know, is that on? Am I doing something wrong? Is it on? Okay, thank you. So like Ian said, this is very hard for us to give our testimony, so please pray for us. Um, things in the past you want to leave in the past, but we tell our testimony to praise God for what He can do in our life and what He could do in your life.
All right, so before we do, let's have a word of prayer. Our loving Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this time together, and we thank you for the ability that we have to just share what you have done in our lives. And I pray that whatever is spoken today would uplift you and give you all the honor and glory, and also would help somebody else in whatever they may be experiencing. And we just pray for your presence and for you to speak through us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, so I'll start. So I was raised in the U.S. and I was born in New Orleans. My mom is Puerto Rican and my dad's from the Bay Islands of Honduras, called Guanaja. And I was born in New Orleans, and from New Orleans we moved to Florida. But during when I was raised in New Orleans, we left when I was 6. But I was raised in an Adventist church. I was raised in an Adventist home. I remember my dad used to give Revelation seminars, and we used to go, always spend time with our family. We had a big family in New Orleans, and we always went to my cousin's house and everything. It was just beautiful. And then when I was 7, I moved to Florida, and we still went to church. I went to private school and everything. And during that time, what started struggling with my life, I want to say, when I was about 7 or 8. I actually never told this as a testimony, but God's impressing me to say it. When I was 7 or 8, my parents, they went to church, but they also lived in the world as well. So when I was 7 or 8, we went to a family's house, and my parents were in the back playing cards and dominoes, and I was inside the house, and all the kids were running around. And during that time, one of my dad's uncle's son molested me, even with my family in the house. So that's where I want to say my journey began with, I guess, sexuality, at such a young age. So my sister, it was just my sister and I. We weren't close, but we loved each other, if that makes sense. And we went to school together and everything. Well, fast forward, my sister was really smart, and I wasn't. But she was really smart, and we went to private school, and she's like, well, if I go to public school, I can finish in 2 years. I can finish in a year instead of 2. So my parents, at that time, we were teenagers, and they kind of already left the church, and they said, okay. So I went to public school, and that's where it all began. I started the first year in public school. At first, it was fun. Me and my sister used to dress up together and stuff, but then she started getting her own crowd, and she kind of left me. And then I found my own set of crowd, and that crowd was smoking, so I started smoking. And they were drinking, and I started drinking, and they were smoking marijuana, so I started smoking marijuana. And then I started to become sexually active in high school. You want to go on with your life? I can stop there.
Sure. So I grew up, as some of you may already know, but I grew up in a Irish Catholic home, but we weren't a very spiritual family. It was just simply we would go to church on the days that that are important. And if you've ever been to a Catholic church, at least from my experience and the ones I went to, it's very brief. It's very just formal. It's very it's very showy, um, and it's basically stand up, sit down, and service is over. You go outside and have coffee and donuts, and that's kind of what it was. That was my experience. So I really didn't know what a Christian was like. The majority of the people that I saw in church were the same people I would see afterwards, drinking alcohol, going to parties, and doing whatever it is that they wanted to do. So to me, Christianity wasn't something that you are, it was just something you do. It was just a formality. It was like a club, for people to just gather together on a Sunday and get together. So, but I still grew up in a good family, so to speak. My father was a alcoholic with some anger issues. Now, he didn't, abuse any of us, but he definitely had an anger problem. I can still remember times of him throwing things in the house and whatnot. Now, as I grew up, similarly, not to the extent of what Angela went through, but when I was very young, I think I was maybe 9 or 10 years old, my mother had told me to go to the neighbor's house to either drop something off or get something. I don't recall what it was. And it was a high school boy that was there. And I remember when I knocked on the door and he opened up the door, I can still, when I talk about this story, I can even smell the house. I remember the smell as it's clear as day, which is amazing how the brain works like that. But I remember when this high school kid, he opens up the door and he invites me to come in. And he didn't want to let me go. I was like, no, I just need, whatever it was. But he makes me come into the house, and he was a high school kid without the parents home, so he was throwing a party. And, it was kind of the end of the party because it was daytime. They must have been drinking all night long into when the sun rose up. And so he sits me down on his couch and he says, hey, I want you to watch something. I'm like, okay. And he throws it on, and it's adult films. We'll just say that, since there's little ears back there. Just adult films. And, that it wasn't something I wanted to do. Even sitting there, I'm like, I should not be watching this. But he was a little bit of a bully. Actually, he was the neighborhood bully. I don't know if you know what a BB gun is, but he had shot me once with a BB gun right in the chest. So he was very much a bully and not somebody you want to mess around with. So he forced me to watch that adult film, and then I went home, and pretty much my life was changed in that moment from the perspective of what, that kind of activity is like, and having respect for women and those kinds of things. It really kind of catapulted me into some dangerous things later in life, struggling with adult films and struggling with how I perceive women and things like that. I more objectified them. And so as I got older, when I went into high school, I was still pretty much a good kid. I still had my mischievous times and years, but I was also very big into soccer. Soccer was my life. That was my identity. That's what I found it in. And my whole world revolved around soccer. I was even training for the Junior Olympics. And so my life was invested with it. And the high school also that I was going to, this was a very prominent high school in the United States. In fact, if you go to this high school and you are in their sports and you're pretty decent academically, you're going to end up at a very good college as long as you do pretty well. So in my mind, I had everything set up. I'm going to go to this high school, get recognized by a very good institution, a very good college. I'm going to go to that college, probably end up going pro, that kind of thing. But to make a long story short, there was somebody who was very influential in the soccer world in Florida who I had played for since I was a kid. And because I made a particular team and his son didn't, from that moment on, he always held a grudge against me. And he made sure that I never got recognized ever again. To the point where even in 8th grade, to make sure I wanted to get into that high school, all of the seniors got awards, except one guy, and that was me. And he did that intentionally in front of the scouts and everyone else because he didn't want me to be recognized. And then when I got to high school, I found out that I even made the team, but he had my name pulled. And so I found that out much later. But that really affected my life because that was my identity. It was sports. I found it in that. And so when that was removed, what's next? what is there for me? I don't know who I am anymore because everything about me was soccer. So I fell into drugs, fell into alcohol. I was pretty much drinking all the time. Every weekend, we were always having parties, always just going to parties or having parties, whatever the case may be. I drowned out everything in booze and drugs, and that was pretty much my high school life. But then, a few years later, after high school, I met somebody.
Wait, hold on. You're going too fast. Okay, so in high school. So let me back up. So my parents, my mom usually stayed home, and she was 11 mom, but she had her own issues. We don't, nobody in my family knows my mom's side of the family. We only know my mom. My mom, she doesn't talk about it. It's always a different story. We believe something happened to her as a kid as well. But she does, so I don't know anyone on my mom's side of the family. So she did the best she could raise me. And then me and my sister. And my dad, he just worked. You know, he was like, I'm the man, I need to provide. So he was a welder and he was always away on ships. So I never really had a father figure. He would just come home and, you know, kiss us and go to bed, and it's always work, work, work. So fast forward, I'm in high school. I'm drinking and being sexually active. Well, one of my friends introduced me to this guy, and I became pregnant with my daughter. They were like, well, if you're pregnant, you need to marry him, you know, to get insurance and all that. So my parents were like, you have to get married. So I was 17 years old, and when I had my first daughter, and so I got married, and as soon as I got married, that's where he became very, very abusive. Um, I would get kicked in the face. I would get punched. I remember one time we were driving, and this 18-wheeler was coming at us, and he was just being ugly, like being mean to the car. I was like, stop it, you're gonna get us hurt. And he literally took his foot and kicked me in my face. It was, and then one time I was staying, we moved so many times because he sold everything for drugs. He would sell my ring, he would sell everything for drugs. And one time we were staying in this tiny, tiny apartment, and I didn't have a car, I didn't have anything, I just had me and my little girl. And he was being so ugly, and I didn't want to let him in. So he literally broke the window. Finally, he got in, and he slammed me against the wall and started beating me. It was, and then my daughter's little right there. It was awful. And he was very jealous because he was doing stuff. But one day he came home, and I was actually dressed nice because he had me dressed in boy clothes. He was very jealous. I was not allowed to dress nice, so he always had me in boy clothes. So one day I actually dressed up nice, and he literally ripped every clothes off of me, and he took scissors and cut all my shoes up. It was awful. And he put holes in the wall. It was just everything. He was just very abusive. Finally, one day, we moved to this other place, and I was laying in the bed, and he just came up to me and smacked me upside my head for no reason, just to hit me. And then he went to go get my daughter. She probably was about 3 at this time. And he went to go give my daughter a shower, but she was little. She just didn't want to take a shower. So he went to go beat her. And then when he went to go beat her, that's when I was like, that's enough. You can hit me all you want. But the moment you're going to touch my kid, I was like, that's it. I literally got up and left and had nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. But I knew if I would have stayed, what kind of example I would have been for my daughter to allow another man to hit her. And so a friend of mine let me sleep on the floor, and I went to my dad's house, and my dad got remarried, and she was an evil woman. I would come home and my clothes would be all over the yard. So she was very abusive as well. And my dad allowed her to treat me like this as well. And so fast forward, I meet Ian. So I start working at a gas station, and I'm trying to put myself through school, being a single mother. And I meet Ian at a gas station, and he comes in. I work the graveyard, and he came in drunk. Huh? Oh, so everybody knows what graveyards work at night shift. Night shift. Yeah, yeah. So Ian comes in and he's drunk. I have no idea that he's drunk. I just know that I'm ringing whatever he wants up, and his friends outside honking the horn, throwing up outside. And I'm like, you may want to go get your friend. And he's like, no, he's fine. How you doing? And I was like, oh boy. So he invited me somewhere, and I was like, okay, this guy's gonna call me. Nope, he never called me.
I was playing hard again.
Yeah. So another time he came, he's like, you wanna go eat? And he was drunk this time too, had no idea. And I was like, sure. He's like, you wanna go eat in the morning after your shift? I was like, sure. So we went to go eat, and then ever since then, we were, on the weekends, we were just partying at clubs, white boy can dance, and yeah, we were just always out drinking and having fun on the weekends. And I was working, trying to go to school and take care of my daughter on top of that. Let's see, from there, where were we?
Well, this was in South Florida, but then I had moved away to go to college for a little bit, and then my wife, or then girlfriend, would travel to come see me. I was about 4 hours away, and then at one point she just stayed with me, and got her, some other things together in her life while she was there. But we had a very, not to drag on the testimony, but we had a very up and down relationship. It was pretty chaotic, really. I mean, because it was just all play all the time, and then when things wouldn't go right, we would, separate and leave each other. And then we'd come back together, and then, we'd separate again for a while, and always come back together, and it was like cyclical until finally we had stayed together for a while. And at this point, it was like 7 years or 6 years, and she just gives me the kind of, the woman ultimatum: either marry me or we're officially done.
Oh yeah, but before that, my cousin actually, so I'm not Christian at this time, I left the church. My cousin, Michelle, she goes, why don't you come to this evangelist series? And I was like, okay. And she's like, please, you need to go. I was like, okay. And then I went to this evangelist series, and the second night I went to the gas station and bought a brand new pack of cigarettes. And mind you, I was in Florida, in Miami, so we had little hoop earrings, and I had jewelry on. And when you hear Ian preach about how God can change you in a moment, God took those cigarettes away from me that same day. I said, God, I want to surrender my life to you. I don't want to smoke anymore. And let me tell you, he took it from me. He took those cigarettes, those brand new pack of cigarettes I bought. I threw them on the floor. I threw my earrings on the floor. I said, God, I'm yours. And from that moment on, God has changed my life. Yeah. So I'm Christian now, and then I have my husband that doesn't want, the heathen that doesn't want to convert. So,
So she comes home after all this, and she lets me know. She goes, I just need to tell you, I know we're together, but I need to let you know God comes first in my life. Now remember how I grew up. That meant nothing to me. I was just like, okay, cool. You do what you want to do as long as I can do what I want to do. So
it was on a Sabbath.
What?
Yeah, that I told you that. It was at Aunt Peter's house.
Yeah.
And he was on the couch, and then this man, he would come to my aunt's house, and she always made my uncle's Cuban. So he always made Cuban food and stuff for us. And he's like, why does your aunt always have to have Pastor Doug Batchelor on? Like, can you pick somebody else? He would just always complain why my aunt would watch Doug Batchelor.
In my defense, it was always a prophecy series that she would watch. So what do you think he was talking about? He was talking about the Catholic Church, the papal Rome. So here I am, even though I'm not Catholic, a lot of Catholics do this. We identify ourselves as being Catholic, even if we're not really Catholic. So it's always Doug Batcher, and I was always complaining, like, why? Every time we're over there, do I have to hear about the papal Rome and the Catholic Church? Can't this guy find anything else to preach about? You know, couldn't stand him. So anyway.
So I'm on the porch and I said, I love you. I want you to know God comes first in my life. I love you, but God comes first. And I meant that with all my heart. Go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
So then, again, it really meant nothing to me, and I still lived my life, and she lived her life. And occasionally we would, I would go to church with her, but I was more of a seat warmer. I just did it to make her happy, to keep her, on her good, or be on her good graces.
Seat warmer. He was miserable.
I was absolutely miserable.
He would sit down and just be like, when is it going to be over? And then he'll be like, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. I can't take this. So he'll go out and go smoke a cigarette. I'm like, oh, mercy, he smells. And he was just miserable. So it was making me miserable.
I mean, but think about it. Again, go back to how I grew up.
Yeah.
In the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It's over in 30, 40 minutes tops, the whole service. It's what time right now? We're still all together? That's kind of how it was. It was a culture shock for me. Like, I don't want to be a part of this. So I would go outside and I would smoke a cigarette and come back in. I know everybody's judged me because now I smell like cigarettes and everything else. And, I'm probably, thinking that people are looking at her like, how could she be with that man? Look at him, going outside and smoking during church. But that's just kind of how it was. And that's why we're always battling and things like that. But then she gave me the ultimatum on some things about whether or not, I married her or not, So I decided, okay, let's get married.
7 years.
So after 7 years, we got married, and that was kind of like, even though we had some challenges throughout our dating period, it was nothing we really could not work through. It was just simply she was looking for the right man. I was a drunk, and I would party, and I would smoke weed. So that's not what she was looking for. But there was something in her heart that always had her come back to me, and same with mine with hers. So when we got married, I was working for a company, and the company had shut down. And so living in South Florida is very expensive. And so we had a little bit of a severance package that we got, basically it was like, I don't know if you guys do that here or not, but if you get let go, they give you a certain amount of money to sustain life for a little while. And what was that?
3 months.
3 months. Yeah, it's about 3 months of salary. It's actually, yeah, that's about what it was. And as I'm going through this, I'm trying to find a job and everything else. And then my birthday comes around, my good old birthday, and I'm excited about my birthday, but I don't have a job. And I get some fantastic news. My wife is pregnant. And I can tell you, I did not have a very good reaction. There were some choice 4-letter words that came out. And
Starting with that.
I
And like to jump over the balcony.
Okay, we don't need to. It was a complete shock. I'm like, you couldn't wait one more day to tell me this. You had to tell me on my birthday. But really it was that I wasn't expecting that. And it was very much a shock, and I didn't have a job. So now, being a husband, I'm taking care of her. I consider her my daughter, even though she's my stepdaughter. But I consider her my daughter since I've been around since she was 4 years old. So I'm taking care of her. Now she's pregnant, and being a man and a husband, I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I ended up doing what most of the people in my family did, and that was join the Army. My father was in the Army. He was a pharmacy tech, and my grandfather was a spy in World War II. So yeah, so when I joined the Army, even though I was a drunk and smoked a lot of weed, you would think I'd have 0 brain cells, but I was still pretty, reasonably smart. So when I took their test, I was able to get into military intelligence. So that's what I got into. I started doing military intelligence and trying to follow within, my grandfather's footsteps. I'm going to be a spy too. Wasn't like that, but am I still one? I'm spying on all of you. No, I'll never tell you what I did.
I still don't know.
Well, she knows a little bit. A little bit.
I know what you could tell me.
Yeah, and even probably what I told you. Anyways, This isn't being recorded. Put your phones down. So it was, yeah.
So I'm pregnant.
You're pregnant, but you're pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
You're pregnant. I'm in the army.
You're in the army.
Yeah.
I'm working. I finally finished school. I became a dental nurse.
Now, this is where basically the ground just drops out. I go into the army, and immediately, this is the part that I really hate talking about.
So before he says this man is not who he used to be. He's BC before Christ. So whatever he's going to tell you is hard for him, and it's hard for me because we both don't like to talk about it, but it could help someone, is why we do it. Just remember, it's BC before Christ.
Thank you for that caveat. I need that sometimes. So, yeah, and the reason why I wait till the end to share my testimony is so you guys don't judge me in the beginning. So you get to know me in the end, and then if anything, you'll never see me again. So yeah, so I was in the army and dealing with the stresses of the army, and one of the things that I can tell you that I can divulge is what I was doing in the army was not overseas. It was done remotely, and I was watching people die every single day, and I was a part of that. And it still hurts to this day a little bit because I carry that with me. It's funny when they give you an award when because of what you were doing and the missions that you oversaw and the time that you were there were over 200 confirmed kills, and I was a part of all of those. And so it's really difficult. Even when I talk about it, I can still see some of the images in my head. They never really go away, even though I wasn't there directly. It's not a video game. This is real life, and people are being hurt from it, and you don't necessarily know if they're bad. You're just given orders and you do what you're supposed to do. So I'm dealing with all this, and I can't tell my wife what I do. So, and because I'm not, in Afghanistan or in a war zone or wherever, I can't really tell her what I'm doing. So I go from this, area of my life where I'm taking people's life, and then I got to come home and be a father. I got to come home and be a dad, and I didn't know how to do that. It was hard to make that switch to just walk out of the office after you had just watched people die all day, and then be the husband that you need to be. So my drinking had actually increased. I would basically come home from work, and I would immediately start drinking beer. I wasn't big into liquor or anything like that. It was just beer, but. And then because I didn't know because I was always drunk and making bad, poor decisions, I did something that I can never take back. It was something that I did, and I started to have affairs with other women. And my wife then found out about them, and these things were kind of, it was very difficult for us to really move through that. And in fact, it didn't happen just one time. I was a repeat offender, if you want to call it that. It became kind of cyclical, where we were, I would do something, and then, we would be good for a while, but then things would go bad and go south, and then I would revert back to my old ways and do it again. And it was really heartbreaking.
It was really hard. I mean, the first time I found out that he went to a hotel. He lied about it, and mind you, I'm like 9 months pregnant, and we're about to move from Florida to Georgia because he just got orders, and I find out finally he admits it, and then I remember being on the toilet, pregnant, just rocking myself, crying, and it's like, what do you do? What do I do? Do I stay or do I continue with my life? And all I can say is all God that allowed me to continue with him. And then when we moved to Georgia, um, I met a friend and we became good friends, and I would give her my son's clothes and stuff like that. And come to find out, she was having an affair with my husband. Yeah. So that was very hard for me as well. And you remember when he said he dealt with stuff when he was younger, what happened to him. So that was always an issue in our marriage as well. Yeah.
Yeah, where do we go from there? Yeah, so one of the things is I don't understand it to this day on why she stayed with him. Because she had every right to leave biblically, and any other way you want to cut it. She had every right to leave me, but for whatever reason, she stuck around. And I remember when it got to its peak, we were stationed in Maryland, and I was no longer having the physical affairs, but I was having the emotional ones. Still trying to connect somehow. And when she found out about that one, I was like, what am I doing? It really kind of just came to a head, and I decided I need to quit drinking. If anything, I need to give up this alcohol because it's ruining my life, it's ruining my marriage. I don't blame it necessarily on the alcohol, but it definitely, played a major role in the reasons why I was acting out because I'm not thinking clearly. And so it was interesting because my father was an alcoholic and he quit alcohol like that. I mean, snap of a finger. And he, remember, for those of you who were here earlier in the week when I said my father and I, the apple didn't fall far from the tree, he did the same exact things to my mother. He had affairs with her or on her and was an alcoholic and all those other things. So I ended up doing the same thing. And then,
Um, so, so when,
I don't know.
okay. So, when I was going through all this, my cousin Michelle, the same person who told me to go to the evangelist series, she was dealing with stuff, and she's always told me, she's like, read Psalms, read the Bible. So I would read the Bible, and then I would pray, God, is it your will for me to stay with this man? And something God put in my heart that he always made me see Ian, not who he was in front of me, but who he could become and how God saw him. So no matter as many times as it hurt and stuff, God always put in my heart to see Ian the way he saw him.
Yeah, so when, like my father with him quitting alcohol, I pretty much did the same thing. But I knew at this point my words meant nothing. I mean, talk was cheap at that point. They meant nothing to my wife. So what I did is I self-enrolled while I was in the Army into their version of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I figured I have to give her something tangible rather than just me saying it. So what was interesting though is I had the same kind of conversion, I guess, as my father when it comes to drinking alcohol. It was in that moment, I never touched it again. Never desired it, never wanted it, never had any triggers to it, nothing, absolutely zero. And and I'm going to these AA meetings, and I actually felt kind of bad because a lot of the people that were in there really needed to be there, and they would come around and they're all sharing their stories and what triggers did you have this week? Were you able to overcome them? What did you do? What steps did you follow? And then they would come around to me, so I'm fine. Well, did you have any rough? No, I'm good. Did you want to drink? I mean, maybe for a split second when I was walking down the beer aisle at the supermarket, but it didn't really affect me. They're like, after a couple of weeks of this, they're like, let's pull you aside. Because I was actually doing more harm to the people because they're like, how come he can do it and I can't? So they pulled me and I started doing one-on-one meetings with the counselor. And then finally she just said, you really don't need to be here. And I said, yeah, I know, I agree, but I'm here because for my wife, I want her to know that I'm serious this time. And she even said, she goes, if you want me to call your wife, I can tell. I was like, no, it's fine. So we went through this process, and then I can tell you, the healing after that was still very challenging. And we got then stationed back to Georgia, and there's, when you face those many things, that many, I guess repeat affairs and everything else, that pain does not go away. It lingered and it lingered and it lingered, and neither of us really knew how to handle it in the beginning. Neither. She would want to talk about it, and I just want to forget it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to remember it. I don't want to go through any of it because it's so painful for me now in my sober state of mind of what I did to her. But yet I can say now that I saw just a piece of the forgiveness of Jesus in my wife because of how she treated me through all those years. Now, was it perfect? No. Did she treat me perfect? No. But but still, the forgiveness was there. And I can look back on it now and just say, wow, that's to think of that coming from a human being hurt that much. And then imagine us and how we are with Jesus. And he constantly forgives us. So that really gave me a unique perspective into the character of Christ. But we still had a lot of problems and a lot of things that we had to work through. And finally, I guess it got to a point where she couldn't work through it anymore. And she was, we were arguing and fighting a lot, and we didn't know how to handle everything. So there was one time where she just said, I'm gone. And she leaves and goes away for vacation. And she basically tells me, we're getting a divorce. I'm done with you. And so at the same exact time,
And God allowed me to do that as well. It was the weirdest thing because throughout all that, He wanted me to stay with Him. But at this moment, for some reason, God just was like, enough. And I was like, okay, I think I need to let Him go now.
and she was serious. But at this same exact time, my mother was dying with cancer. And so now I'm about to lose the two most important women in my life. I'm about to lose my wife, and I'm about to lose my mother. And I did not know how to handle any of that. What I did in the past was self-medicate. I used alcohol and drugs and whatever else to block or do whatever. And so when this came about, and plus all these, losing these two women and all the stresses of the military life, I didn't know how to handle it. And so I wanted to take my life. And that was my way out, is I'm just going to end my life. And, oh boy. So I remember being out on the back porch of our house, and um, I, I was basically in desperation mode. And I called my brother, basically not to have him save me or say anything I was calling him to let him know I love you. And I'm sorry, man, but this is it for me. I just wanted to let him know that I cared and that I loved him, but I was going to take my own life. So he stayed on the phone with me, and but I was just, like I said, calling him to let him know this is it. This is going to be the end for me. And I can still picture it right now. And every time I tell this story, it doesn't matter how many times, I always tear up. I was standing on the back porch, and I looked into the living room, and inside the living room was my son sitting on the couch looking at me. And I have tears pouring out of my eyes because of the desperation I was in that moment. And all I could think about was, I don't want my son to have this image of his father dead in a pool of blood for the rest of his life, because she was gone and there was nobody else there. So it was just him and I. And looking back on it now, my son saved my life. He doesn't really know it. Um, some of the story he knows. He knows that my wife and I had problems, but he doesn't know the depths in which they were. But I don't think he really has a clue that he saved my life that day just by being there. But so because of that, and my brother stayed on the phone with me, he said, you really need to get help, and you need to get it right now. So the very next day, I called up my leadership in the Army, and they immediately put me in suicide watch. So I was put into a hospital on a military base, and for 4 days, I was under watch. And they didn't let us do anything. And I still smoked cigarettes at the time, and that was like a little bit of a comfort. No, they took all that away, everything. So after the 4 days, they let me out. My brother gives me a call, and he says, hey, you need to come home. Mom's not doing well. I get home, 4 days later, she dies. She passes away, and she succumbs to cancer. So you would think in this moment that this would be my absolute breaking point. And it should have been. But for whatever reason, because if you think about it, 4 days earlier, I just got released from being under suicide watch, and now my mother has died. And so something changed within me. I can't describe it. I can't explain it. I don't know what it was. All I know is that I saw my wife, I saw people, I saw everything in a whole different light than I had ever seen them before. And I remember calling my wife and saying, hey babe, I know, you want this to end, but I'm telling you, things are different. Like I can feel it. I know something is different. And she's just like, yeah, right, whatever. Because I've said these things before, like it's gonna be different. I promise, I'm gonna be good now. I got all this. I got it all together. So she's like, yeah, right. For whatever reason, it has to be all God. That she decided to come back one more time. And so she came back one more time, and from that moment on, everything had changed. Now, looking back, I can see little moments where, quitting the alcohol before I even found Christ. But then, similarly to what my wife experienced, because things started really, you know, it was like the gears were finally together in the right way now. We were talking, we were communicating, we were sharing things, we were really processing, working through the problems. She's asking me questions, and I'm just, as painful as they are, I'm sharing them with her, even whatever details that she asks. So I started sharing everything with her. And then we began to heal now. All the pain that we've been carrying and all the questioning, all the wondering and everything, that was the most difficult thing, was for me to like start really opening. We basically had to open up that wound again. We had to rip it wide open and start from scratch. And she started asking me questions. And anything that our agreement was, anything that you ask me, I'm gonna answer it, no matter how painful it is. And she was asking some detailed questions, I can tell you. And I would share, and I would tell her, and we began to heal. And then she took me to.
Well, my friend, are you talking about the marriage series?
Yes.
So one of my good friends, actually, what's that thing? Ian was going to church, but he was going to church and he was trying to do better and everything. And
But I was sincere this time.
he was crying, but he wasn't fully in. So let me tell you what made him go fully in. It wasn't reading the Bible. It wasn't going to church. It was one kind act from someone. Our AC broke, and my friend's husband called a guy he knew to come fix it and paid for it. And Ian said, why would somebody do that for me? He doesn't know me. What is up with this Christianity? And from that moment forward, which we're best friends with them, and from that moment forward, he looked at Christianity in a whole different light. Just being kind to somebody, just doing something nice for someone can change someone. And so my friend Jennifer, this guy's wife, she goes, "Girl, you gotta watch this sermon." It was Caribbean camp meeting. I was like, okay. So I watched it. I was like, girl, that was powerful. I said, we need to share this. She goes, girl, he is here. I said, what do you mean he's here? She said, girl, he is, this is how we talk in the South. And she's like, girl, he is here. I was like, well, we need to go watch him. So I went to the evangelist series. It was Chris Shelton and his wife, Kenny Shelton, Chris Shelton, his wife. And I went, I got blessed, and I told Ian, I was like, you want to go to this evangelist series? And I think at first you said no. Did you? Or did you go the first night?
I don't really recall, but chances are I probably said no.
Yeah, I think you did, and you went the other night.
Yeah, I didn't go the first night.
Yes, so he went, and when he went, so this is in Georgia, in a little town, and these people are really country. Okay.
I have to tell this. So have you ever been to a Catholic church before? Okay. Have you seen how grand and how marvelous and marble and the stained glass and gold and everything just looks so beautiful? We arrived to a single family home that was it was smaller than this room, easily.
Yeah.
Much smaller than this room. And then we walk in there, and if you don't know who Kenny Shelton is, he's got a country He's got a country accent. So I don't know if you have it around here, but there's a faith um, that does things like with serpents. They believe that there's power, and if you get bit by a serpent, then you must have sinned, and that kind of thing. This is the idea that I'm walking, like, this is what I think I'm walking into, because that's a very country thing in the United States. And I'm thinking I'm walking into this, but then I realize as I'm there, this is just a home church. That's all that it is. It's just a home church. And so we go in there, and I'm listening to the sermon, and to this day, I don't really remember what he said, but afterwards, he's making this appeal after the evangelistic series. He's making this appeal, and it's like everything his. You ever seen those movies? I don't know if anyone here was a movie watcher before, but if you ever seen those movies when it's like, it's somebody in the midst of an entire crowd, and all of a sudden the rest of the crowd just disappears, and it's just that one person that they see. That's what it was kind of like for me. It was like everyone else in that room had disappeared, and everything that man was saying was speaking to me, as if he and I are just sitting down having a conversation like we are right now. Everything that he was saying was reaching my heart, and I guess I'm a little concerned at this moment. I felt a spiritual battle take place, and he's making that appeal, like, if you want to give your heart to God, those kind of things. Stand up for the Lord. All these people are standing up. Now, I've seen this happen a couple of times in the Adventist church. Definitely not the Catholic church, but in the Adventist church, I've seen them do altar calls. And if you notice, it seems like everyone and their children get up and walk to the altar call. In my mind, I'm not doing it. Not unless I mean it. I'm not going to be one of those that just gets up because I'm stubborn. That's how I am. And so he's making this altar call, though, and it's like I can feel, and I talked about this a little bit through the week or this series. I could feel that great controversy taking place in my mind, because I had the devil yelling at me, saying, "You're not good enough. Look at what you've done. Look at the people you've hurt. Look what you've done to your wife. How can God accept you? How can God love you?" These are the things that are like screaming into my head while this preacher is trying to reach my heart, and through the Holy Spirit trying to reach my heart. And finally, this was really awkward for me, because I wanted to stand up. I really did. I genuinely wanted to give my heart to God, and by me doing that was really a very hard, symbolic moment between me and God if I stood up. It wasn't just going to be one of those pass through where the pastor makes an appeal and that kind of. This meant something to me if I was going to stand up, and I really wanted to. And the moment that I was going to, it felt like somebody was sitting on my chest and not letting me get up. And then I felt like each leg weighed 500 pounds. It was it was really weird for me. It was very, looking back, I know it was a spiritual thing that was taking place, but it kind of scared me. It wasn't something I was accustomed to. Like, I could not breathe. And I remember I did not stand up. We went home, and
He said, "Let's go." I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "No, just go. Just turn on the part." I was like, "Here comes the pastor." He said, "Nope, let's go."
Yeah, I basically hightailed it out of there, because I didn't know what that.
He just goes around.
I didn't know what that was all about, but it was full blown spiritual. Yeah. It felt weird. Still looking back on it now, I'm just like that. That doesn't even make sense. It doesn't compute, but I know what I was going through. And then as I sat down back at our house, and I just started to process what was happening, and my wife was telling me, "You just went through a spiritual battle and this and that." So we then get up, or I get up, and then I go to her and I say, can we one more time to that evangelistic series?" And you wanted for my wife to hear that come from my mouth. Let's go to an evangelistic series. Let me tell you, that was like, you couldn't pay her enough to want to hear those words. And so she actually had plans the next day, and she completely canceled everything that she had going on and took me to the evangelistic series.
It was on Sabbath.
It was on Sabbath. And then obviously I gave my heart to God that day, and everything completely changed. And to the point, now I know why God has me speak and at different, in Dubai, and we've gone to other places and other countries, and especially around our local area, because once I became a Christian, I was on fire for God. I was like, I just want to serve you. And I did the worst prayer I could have ever made, and that was, Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And then you know what happened? I went to that church a little bit later because we had an interview with 3ABN, and they wanted to hear how things went because they were part of my whole conversion. So I went back to the church and shared my testimony, and then we went back another time, and we're sitting there in this little church, and all of a sudden 2 people come up to me. Mind you, I'm like, Lord, I'll do whatever you want. 2 people come up to me and pull me into the back of the church. Well, not forcefully, they asked me into the back of the church, and they pull me into this room with the pastor, and they just go, we just feel really impressed that you're going to be our speaker today. And I said, come again? And they're like, no, we feel really impressed by the Holy Spirit that you are supposed to deliver a message today. And I just was like, Lord, what are you doing? And I can say that.
So I'm sitting in front, and I see Ian come, I'm like, where's he going? And here he goes up front, I'm like, what in the world is going on here?
Okay, this is how I looked at my wife, right? Because they pulled me all the way to the front, and this is what I did. I go. So.
Okay, let me say something real quick. So you want to see how God is. God has such a sense of humor. So Kenny and Chris, Ian gives his heart to God that day on Sabbath. But before that, Kenny gives me or Ian, I forgot which one, a 3ABN pen.
Like the pens that we were.
And he's like, we were supposed to get a free gift. And he's like, the only thing I have, because they ran out of gifts, is this 3ABN pen. And, God knew where we were going to work. And God knew everything. And it's just, I always tickle at that and laugh because I'm like, look at God. He knew we were going to work there. He would just hand it to us like, here you go. You don't know, but you're going to be working here. And, okay, I just tickle at that. Okay, where are you?
No, so as we go to the front of this church, and that's where I was at, is they called me and they wanted me to preach that day. So I gave a sermon, just off the cuff, off the top of my head, and came up with whatever I could come up with and whatever God would put on me. I just shared. I remember like a few days earlier, I wrote my own little devotional. It was probably the worst little thing I could ever do. It's probably horrible.
It was great.
Sure. And but I think God gave some people what they needed to hear in that moment. So I stepped forward in faith and just said, okay, I did say I would do whatever you want me to do. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was his test of me. So, because believe it or not, my wife thinks I do, but believe it or not, I actually don't enjoy public speaking because I get very nervous and I get very hard on myself, especially if things don't come out the way I wanted them to come out and things. Like I really look back and I'm like, oh. So I just went ahead and went through it and everything else, and then we ended up. I don't want to go into the whole story of us ending up at 3ABN, but to make it short, we just got connected with Pastor John Lomacane through. This was during COVID time, and
let me say it because I talked about it.
Okay, go. So we got connected with Pastor. I did just say I don't like talking about it. So we did. We got connected with Pastor Lomacane during COVID, doing Bible studies on Zoom.
He sent him his testimony.
Yeah.
And then he comes up to me and says, hey, you're not going to believe this. He emailed me back. I was like, who? He's like, Pastor Lomacane. So Pastor Lomacane, he's amazing. He actually got on the phone. Angie, his wife, Angela. I'm Angela number 2. She's Angela number 1. And we go on today programs and okay. Ian's talking to Pastor Lomacane and everything, and then that's when he's like, let's do Bible studies. And then he's in the middle of, we just got orders to go to Texas.
Yeah, that was a whole thing with me getting out of the Army, because when I gave my heart to God, there's so many little stories we could tell, but when I gave my heart to God and I said that I want to work for you, it was in that very moment. Mind you, prior to that, I was trying to get ahead of things about where I was going to get stationed next. And so I was trying to get ahead and dealing with what we call our branch manager. He handles our assignments. And he kept telling me, no, you're not even on my radar. You're not even on my radar. I've got nothing for you right now. The moment I gave my heart to God, I got an email from him. Hey, here's your orders. You're going to, someplace in Pensacola, Florida. I was trying to go to Italy. And he said,
No, it was Texas.
oh, yeah, you're right. So it was in Texas, and it was to do a job that I really wanted to do. It was going to be an Army instructor. And I really wanted that position as an Army instructor because it would help me get to that next rank. And but now here I am wondering, okay, this seems a little fishy because I've been trying to work with my branch manager to get my next duty station, and he's been telling me I'm not even on his radar. And the moment I give my heart to God, now all of a sudden I have to be, I have to go somewhere. And it was common for you to have to be there within like maybe 12 to 15 months is when you have to report to your next duty station. Can you guess when I had to report? 90 days. So I'm thinking, what is going on here? And so this was my next, fork in the road, I guess, where I had to make a decision. Am I going to do everything that I wanted to do, all the plans that I had made for myself? Because now I have this Army career that's building. I already got to the rank that I told myself, if I make this rank, that I was going to do my full 20 years in the Army. And so,
You were at 12 at this point.
about 11. And then, so in one path, it's everything I've ever desired while I was in the Army. And the other path was I have to give up everything and follow God in faith. And that was those moments like that I talked about where I was like, going down on the ground and waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning in tears, trying to figure out because I got a family I have to take care of. And so eventually I came to the decision through some events, just being at the church that we were at and seeing my kids running around and having a good time, and then seeing my wife laughing with everybody. I'm like, this is a church that has helped me get to where I'm at, and I need to stay here. And so I decided I'm going to leave everything and follow God in faith. And we sold our house. We moved into a small.
No. It was the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
When all this happened. And we put our house by faith in the middle. When I say middle, I mean everything was shut down. Everything. I still work because I was at a horse farm. I wasn't infecting anybody. But so in the middle of COVID, we put our house by faith. And that weekend, I think we had 7 offers that weekend. So it was all God, just all God.
We basically had like a bidding war
Yes.
between 2 or 3 people in the first weekend.
During COVID.
Isn't
that crazy? That was all God. So we kind of knew we were moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. So we sold our home, we moved into a smaller home, and I'm following God. Everything's going to be great.
But you don't have a job.
But I don't have a job. So I get out.
But we're doing Bible studies with Pastor Logan.
We're doing Bible studies, but I don't have a job. And so the money I'm just seeing dwindle out of our account. All the money that we made out of selling our house is just every month. It's just dwindling and dwindling. And every time I would tell myself, or even out loud, I would be like, I can't do this anymore. I got to go find a job. And I remember one of those times, Pastor John, the moment I said those words, Pastor John Lomakin calls me and says, hey, send me your resumes. I want to give them to Greg and Jill. I've already talked to them about you and Angela, and they want to see your resumes. Get them to me by tomorrow. I said, oh boy, okay. So we do our resumes and I send them up, and then months go by and I don't hear a thing. So I'm just saying to myself, okay, well this is not going to work. So I was telling my wife, I'm like, I need to go get a job. I'm going to go do security or something. And as soon as I said that day to her, I got another phone call. And it was from 3ABN saying, hey, we want to set up an interview with you through Google Meets and blah, blah, blah. So we set up the interview. And so I kind of put the job search on hold. And so we did our interview through Google Meets. And guess what happened? We wait for a whole long time again. And so finally I just said, once again, I'm like, I can't do this. I have to go get a job. Now, mind you, I was technically hired as a contractor, a military contractor, but it was going back to doing the same exact thing that I was doing before, which is all the remote stuff, and I didn't want to be a part of it. So, so then time goes by, And then finally, we did our interview, and then they invite us to go up there to have our interview with them. And then, Angela and I come, and we have our interview with them. Now, there's one thing I do want to tell you, because this is divine. If when you are processing and getting out of the military, you have to go through all these loops and jump through all these, holes and everything else. And you also have to take care of all of your medical stuff so that you can get compensation. Because I spent 12 years in the Army, I'm a little banged up, so I had recorded all these things so I can get my military compensation when I come out. That usually takes months, sometimes even years, for it to get its final approval. Now, if you know the Bible, what is a very important number in the Bible? 7. Guess how many days it took for it to get approved once I finalized out of the Army?
7 days.
7 days. And that was the same day that we finished our in-person interviews at 3ABN. So when we left, I told my wife, I said, we're coming back. I know they're going to hire us, because there's no way that all this stuff would have happened in the manner in which it happened. We're going to end up working at 3ABN. So then we moved at 3ABN.
So we moved to 3ABN, and so my daughter is in Georgia, and she's older, and I'm like, you need to come move with us. And she said, no, I don't want to move there. There's nobody there for me. She's like, it's just corn fields and cows. She's like, there's no guys there. So finally, it's kind of true. But I was like, no, God's going to find you a Christian man. Just come. I said, I'm praying. So I always pray for your children to find the right husband and the right wife. Even now, start praying, because that can affect their salvation. So I was praying for my daughter. So she comes and she meets, 3ABN has the head audio guy, and that's Ben Lingo, which is now her husband. And so she married him, and
they have a baby. So
and we're grandparents. But let me tell you how good God is. God is so good. So we've been 12 years in the military. That's 12 years without my family. That's 12 years without my sister, my dad, my mom, my cousins. Let me tell you how God had, so we moved there by faith in the middle of COVID. Then my cousin moves there with her 2 kids. And then my mom moves there with her husband. Then my sister moves there with her family. And then my dad moves there. It was over 20 of my family members that moved to around 3ABN. So God not only blessed us, but he sent my family there as well. And remember the children, how me and my sister will always pray for a country home. My sister got her 10 acres of country living. Yeah, so it's just amazing how good God is if you're faithful and just obedient to him. And one thing I always want to say is, no matter what your spouse is going through, never leave the church. Because when I did give my life to God and we went through all those trials, I didn't leave the church. And then Ian, when God, in God's timing, which was 11 years later, I prayed for my husband for 11 years. And I had the same prayer, God, help my husband to give his life to you. Help him stop smoking and help him to stop drinking. And God answered all those prayers. But never leave the church.